On Tuesday, October 15th, at exactly 3:47 p.m., Marcus Chen made what should have been a routine return to his corner office on the 52nd floor of the Chen Technologies Tower. What he discovered behind that mahogany door would force him to confront a truth he'd spent 15 years running from. By 4:15 p.m. that same afternoon, the entire trajectory of two lives had changed forever. This isn't just another story about money and power. This is about the moment when a man worth $2.3 billion realized that everything he thought he knew about success was wrong. It's about Elena Rodriguez, a woman who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford her brother's medical bills, yet possessed something Marcus's fortune couldn't buy. And it's about what happens when two people, separated by every barrier society can construct, wealth, position, background, find themselves face to face with the one thing that makes us all equal, our deepest vulnerabilities. Marcus Chen built his empire on one simple principle: emotion is weakness. For 15 years, this rule served him well. It made him ruthless in negotiations, untouchable in boardrooms, and utterly alone in life. His penthouse apartment, worth $12 million, felt emptier than the one bedroom he'd shared with his parents as a child. His executive assistant knew his coffee preferences, his meeting schedules, his favorite restaurants, but had never seen him smile. Not once. Not in 2 years. Elena Rodriguez knew something was coming. She'd worked for powerful men before, and she recognized the signs. The longer hours, the sharper edge to his voice, the way he'd started looking at her just a fraction too long before turning away. But what she expected that Tuesday afternoon, perhaps an uncomfortable advance from her billionaire boss, wasn't what she got. What she got was something far more dangerous, a glimpse behind the mask of a man who had forgotten he was human. The security cameras in that office captured everything. 28 minutes of footage that would later be reviewed by lawyers, board members, and private investigators. But those cameras couldn't capture what really happened in that room. They couldn't record the moment when two people stopped performing their assigned roles and became something neither of them was prepared for: real. This is that story. A story about what happens when the most powerful man in Silicon Valley discovers that his secretary, the woman he barely noticed beyond her efficiency, is fighting battles that would break him. And what happens when she realizes that the man she thought was made of ice and ambition is drowning in the same loneliness that keeps her awake at night. But here's what makes this story different from every other tale of workplace drama you've heard. It's true. Every conversation, every decision, every consequence that followed has been verified through interviews, security footage, medical records, and corporate documents. The names have been changed, but the events happened exactly as I'm about to tell you. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why two people who should never have trusted each other became the only ones who could save each other from the lives they were trapped in. Before we start the story, leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Marcus Chen's story begins where most American dreams end, with failure. His parents, Li and Wei Chen, arrived in San Francisco in 1987 with 2 suitcases and a plan to open a small restaurant in Chinatown. The Golden Dragon lasted exactly 18 months before creditors seized everything, leaving the family with nothing but debt and the bitter taste of broken promises. Young Marcus watched his father, a proud man who had been an engineer in Shanghai, wash dishes in other people's restaurants just to keep food on their table. He watched his mother, who had taught literature at Beijing University, clean office buildings at 4 a.m. because the shame of their failure made daylight work unbearable. And he made a promise to himself that would shape every decision for the next 25 years. He would never be weak enough to lose everything again. By age 35, Marcus Chen had kept that promise in spectacular fashion. Chen Technologies dominated the cloud computing industry, with offices in 17 countries and annual revenues exceeding $4 billion. His personal fortune ranked him among the top 50 wealthiest individuals in America. Business magazines called him the Ice King of Silicon Valley, a title he wore like armor. But success, as Marcus discovered, is a peculiar kind of prison. His corner office on the 52nd floor of the Chen Technologies Tower was a masterpiece of minimalist design, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of San Francisco Bay, hand-selected mahogany furniture, original artwork worth more than most people's homes. Yet the space felt sterile, clinical. No family photos decorated his desk. No personal mementos cluttered his shelves. The only indication that a human being worked in this space was a single coffee mug, always empty, always clean. His daily routine was regimented with military precision. 5:30 a.m. workout in his private gym, 6:45 a.m. review of Asian market reports, 7:30 a.m. first meetings. Lunch was consumed at his desk while reviewing quarterly projections. Dinner, when he remembered to eat, was delivered from whichever restaurant his assistant had chosen. By 11 p.m., he was back in his penthouse apartment, reviewing tomorrow's agenda until exhaustion finally claimed him. This was Marcus Chen at the height of his power, untouchable, uncompromising, and utterly alone. Elena Rodriguez understood struggle in ways that Marcus Chen had spent 15 years trying to forget. Born in East San Jose to parents who cleaned hotels and picked fruit in Salinas Valley, she learned early that intelligence without opportunity is just another form of suffering. While her classmates worried about prom dates and college applications, Elena was calculating grocery budgets and forging her mother's signature on permission slips because her parents were working double shifts just to keep the lights on. But Elena possessed something that couldn't be taught or bought, an unshakable belief that circumstances don't define character. She graduated valedictorian from her high school, earned a full scholarship to UC Davis, and worked her way through a part-time MBA program while supporting her family. By 28, she had transformed herself into one of the most sought-after executive assistants in Silicon Valley. When she accepted the position as Marcus Chen's executive assistant, Elena knew she was entering a different world. The salary alone, $120,000 annually, was more than her parents had ever made combined. But the money came with a price: absolute perfection. Marcus Chen's previous assistant had been terminated for scheduling a meeting 15 minutes late. His assistant before that had lasted 6 weeks before the stress-induced panic attacks forced her to quit. Elena survived where others failed because she understood something about powerful men that most people missed. Their cruelty often stems from their own unhealed wounds. She watched Marcus Chen the way a meteorologist watches storm patterns, learning to predict his moods, anticipate his needs, and navigate his temper with the precision of a surgeon. For 2 years, their relationship was purely transactional. He gave orders, she executed them flawlessly. He criticized, she improved without complaint. He paid her well, she earned every dollar. It was professional efficiency at its finest, two people working together without ever really seeing each other. But Elena was fighting battles that Marcus never suspected. Her younger brother, Daniel, had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 16. Without insurance, his insulin costs alone consumed nearly half of Elena's salary. The medical bills from his emergency room visits, because they couldn't afford regular doctor appointments, had already forced her to take a second job tutoring business executives' children on weekends. The third job, transcribing medical records at night, paid for her own rent and groceries. Elena Rodriguez was drowning, but she was drowning quietly, efficiently, without disturbing anyone else's peace of mind. Just the way she had been taught to live her entire life. October 2023 brought a crisis that would test everything Marcus Chen had built. Sterling Dynamics, a massive conglomerate with interests in everything from defense contracts to social media platforms, launched what business analysts called the most aggressive hostile takeover attempt in tech history. Their target, Chen Technologies. David Sterling, the silver-haired CEO of Sterling Dynamics, had been circling Marcus's company for 3 years, waiting for any sign of weakness. He found it in Chen Technologies' recent quarterly report, which showed a minor decrease in profit margins, the first decline in 5 years. To most investors, it was a temporary adjustment. To Sterling, it was blood in the water. The corporate warfare that followed was ruthless and exhausting. 16-hour days became the new normal for Marcus and his core team. Legal battles raged in 3 different courts. Public relations firms launched competing media campaigns. Stock prices fluctuated wildly based on rumors and speculation. Every decision Marcus made was scrutinized by shareholders, board members, and financial reporters looking for any sign that the pressure was affecting his judgment. Elena found herself at the center of this storm, managing not just Marcus's impossible schedule but the endless stream of lawyers, accountants, and advisors who needed access to him. Her days began at 6 a.m. and often didn't end until after 10 p.m. She coordinated emergency board meetings, arranged conference calls with overseas investors, and maintained the facade that everything was under control even as the company's future hung in the balance. But the pressure was taking its toll on everyone, especially Marcus. Elena noticed the changes first, the way his hands shook slightly after particularly difficult phone calls, the dark circles under his eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide, the sharp edge to his voice that cut through conversations like broken glass. He was pushing himself past any reasonable limit, and Elena knew from experience what happened to people who drove themselves beyond exhaustion. They broke. What none of them realized was that the biggest threat to Marcus Chen's empire wasn't coming from sterling dynamics or hostile shareholders or market volatility. It was coming from within, from the human cost of treating people like machines and expecting both to function without maintenance indefinitely. The breaking point was approaching, and when it came, it would change everything. Tuesday, October 15th started like any other day in the Chen Technologies war room. Marcus left his penthouse at 6:45 a.m. for what was scheduled to be a crucial meeting with Yamamoto Industries, potential allies in his fight against Sterling Dynamics. The Japanese executives had flown in specifically to discuss a partnership that could inject $2 billion into Chen Technologies, enough to make any hostile takeover financially impossible. Elena arrived at the office 30 minutes before Marcus, as she had every working day for 2 years. She arranged his conference room, prepared briefing documents, and coordinated with the translation services. Everything was perfect, methodical, exactly as Marcus expected. The meeting was scheduled to run from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., which meant Elena would have rare quiet hours to catch up on the administrative chaos that had accumulated during weeks of crisis management. At 1:45 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. Elena answered with her standard greeting, "Marcus Chen's office, this is Elena." The voice on the other end belonged to Hiroshi Yamamoto himself. The meeting was cancelled. A family emergency had called the executives back to Tokyo immediately. They would reschedule when the current corporate crisis had resolved. Elena delivered the news to Marcus as he adjusted his tie in preparation for the meeting. She watched his face process the information, the slight tightening around his eyes, the momentary pause before he nodded curtly. "Reschedule for next month," he said, his voice betraying nothing. "I'll be in my office reviewing the sterling contracts." But Marcus Chen didn't go to his office. Instead, he drove to the Bay Area, parked his Tesla at Ocean Beach, and sat staring at the Pacific Ocean for nearly an hour. Security footage from the parking lot shows him motionless behind the wheel, his head resting against the headrest, eyes closed. Later, when investigators interviewed him about that day, Marcus would say he couldn't remember making the decision to drive there. He just needed to breathe. Elena, meanwhile, believed she had the office to herself. Marcus rarely returned from meetings early, and when he did, he always called ahead. She had learned to treasure these brief moments of solitude, opportunities to let her guard down, to be Elena Rodriguez instead of Marcus Chen's perfectly efficient assistant. What happened next was captured in excruciating detail by the office security system. But to understand why it mattered so much, you need to know what Elena had been hiding. 3 days earlier, on Saturday, October 12th, Elena's world had quietly collapsed. Her brother Daniel, now 22 and a senior at UC Berkeley, had been rushed to UCSF Medical Center in diabetic ketoacidosis, a life-threatening condition that occurs when blood sugar levels remain dangerously high for extended periods. The cause was simple and devastating. Daniel had been rationing his insulin. At $340 per vial, with his prescription requiring 4 vials per month, the medication cost more than many people's car payments. Elena had been covering these expenses for 6 years, but the additional financial stress of her own student loans, rent in one of America's most expensive cities, and their parents' mounting medical bills had finally exceeded even her carefully managed budget. Daniel had made the decision without telling his sister. He stretched each vial by reducing his doses, convincing himself that he could manage his blood sugar through diet and exercise alone. It was a gamble that nearly killed him. The hospital bill for his 3-day stay, $47,000. Even with the payment plan Elena negotiated, the monthly payments would consume her entire salary. She would need to find a fourth job, or she would need to ask for help. And Elena Rodriguez had never asked for help in her life. The insurance forms spread across Marcus's desk that Tuesday afternoon told a story that Elena had never shared with anyone. Pre-existing condition denials. Experimental treatment exclusions. Claims rejected for technicalities so obscure that even the hospital billing department couldn't explain them. Each denied claim represented hours of Elena's time on hold with insurance companies, pleading with representatives who were trained to say no. But the most devastating document wasn't a medical bill or insurance form. It was a letter from UC Berkeley's financial aid office. Daniel's academic scholarship was being revoked due to his medical absences. Without the scholarship, he would need to withdraw from school just 8 months before graduation. 6 years of Elena's sacrifices, Daniel's dedication, their family's hopes, all ending because a 22-year-old couldn't afford the medication that kept him alive. Elena had been staring at that letter for 20 minutes when Marcus Chen opened his office door. At 3:47 p.m., Marcus Chen used his keycard to access his private office. He expected to find the space empty, as it always was when Elena stepped away from her desk. Instead, he found a woman he didn't recognize. Elena Rodriguez was crying. Not the silent, dignified tears that people shed at funerals or graduations. These were the ugly, desperate sobs of someone who had reached the absolute end of their endurance. Her shoulders shook with each breath. Her carefully styled hair had fallen loose around her face. Her hands clutched medical documents that were wrinkled from her grip. The sound Marcus heard first wasn't crying, it was Elena's voice, speaking Spanish in a rapid, broken whisper. Later, a bilingual employee would translate the security audio. Dios mío, no sé qué hacer. No puedo perderlo. No puedo perder a mi hermano. My God, I don't know what to do. I can't lose him. I can't lose my brother. For 37 seconds, Marcus stood frozen in his doorway. The woman he had worked with for 2 years, who had never arrived late, never missed a deadline, never shown the slightest crack in her professional composure, was completely and utterly broken. And she was using his private phone to call insurance companies, begging them to reconsider claims for someone named Daniel Rodriguez. The documents scattered across his desk told the story Elena had never shared. Medical bills totaling over $200,000, insurance denials, payment plans that exceeded her annual salary, and a university letter that would destroy her brother's future. Marcus Chen, who had built his fortune on reading people's weaknesses and exploiting them, found himself face to face with a kind of vulnerability he had forgotten existed, the vulnerability of someone who had nothing left to lose except the people they loved. When Elena finally noticed him standing there, the silence that followed lasted exactly 43 seconds. The security cameras captured their faces in that moment, Elena's horror at being discovered, Marcus's confusion at seeing his assistant as a human being for the first time. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was Elena's ragged breathing as she tried to compose herself. What Marcus Chen did next would be analyzed by corporate psychologists, business ethicists, and leadership consultants for years to come. But in that moment, standing in his office watching Elena Rodriguez try to hold herself together with pure willpower, Marcus Chen forgot every rule he had built his life on. He closed the door behind him, walked to his desk, and said the words that would change both of their lives forever. Tell me what's wrong. What followed was the most honest conversation Marcus Chen had engaged in since childhood. Elena, still clutching the crumpled medical documents, tried to explain herself in fragments, apologizing for using his phone, for crying in his office, for bringing her personal problems into his workspace. But Marcus did something that surprised them both. He listened. Your brother, he said, picking up the UC Berkeley letter from his desk. He's pre-med. Elena nodded, unable to trust her voice. Diabetic since 16, Marcus continued, reading from the insurance forms. Type 1. Requires insulin 4 times daily. Each fact he recited was like a dagger to Elena's composure. This man she had worked for, who barely acknowledged her existence beyond professional necessities, was reading the most private details of her family's struggle. But then Marcus Chen did something unprecedented. He sat down across from Elena. Not behind his imposing desk where he conducted all business, but in the chair beside her, as if they were equals. My father, he said quietly, had diabetes too. Adult onset, what they call type 2 now. This was 1995, and we couldn't afford his medication either. Elena looked up at him for the first time since he'd entered the office. The Marcus Chen she thought she knew, cold, calculating, untouchable, was gone. In his place was someone she had never seen before, a man carrying his own weight of unspoken grief. We lost our house first, Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Then the restaurant. My father stopped taking his insulin because he said the mortgage was more important. He had a stroke 3 months later. Massive. The doctors said if he had been managing his diabetes properly, it never would have happened. Marcus paused, staring at his hands. He spent the last 2 years of his life unable to speak, unable to walk, unable to recognize my mother or me. All because we couldn't afford $37 for his monthly prescription. The silence that followed was heavy with shared understanding. Elena realized that the man she had seen as her wealthy, privileged employer had once sat in hospital waiting rooms just as she had, watching someone he loved suffer because of money, or the lack of it. I built this company, Marcus said, gesturing to the expensive office around them, so that I would never have to choose between medication and rent again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that other people are still making that same choice every day. He looked directly at Elena. I forgot that my assistant might be one of them. What happened next defied every corporate protocol and professional boundary that Marcus Chen had established in 15 years of business. He asked Elena to tell him about Daniel, not as an employer reviewing an employee's personal problems, but as one person trying to understand another's struggle. Elena found herself describing her brother in ways she had never shared with anyone at work. Daniel the scholar, who had taught himself calculus in high school because their school couldn't afford an advanced math teacher. Daniel the caregiver, who had spent his teenage years managing his own medical condition so expertly that their parents never fully grasped how serious it was. Daniel the dreamer, who planned to become an endocrinologist specifically to help other families navigate the financial maze of chronic illness. He's 8 months from graduating, Elena said, her voice steadying as she talked about her brother's achievements. Full scholarship to medical school at Stanford, pending his degree completion. He's been researching ways to make insulin more affordable. His senior thesis is on biosynthetic alternatives that could reduce production costs by 70%. She managed a small smile. He says he's going to put the pharmaceutical companies out of business. Marcus listened with an intensity that Elena had only seen him display during board meetings. But this wasn't business calculation. This was something else entirely. You've been supporting him alone? He asked. Elena nodded. Parents. My father has a back injury from construction work. My mother cleans houses when she can, but her arthritis. Elena trailed off, realizing she was sharing details of her family's poverty with a billionaire. But Marcus didn't recoil from her story. Instead, he began sharing his own. After my father's stroke, my mother worked 4 jobs to pay his medical bills and keep us housed. She cleaned offices at night, took in laundry during the day, babysat neighbors' children on weekends, and tutored Chinese immigrants in English conversation. I was 16, and I thought she was superhuman. I didn't understand that she was killing herself trying to keep our family together. Did she? Elena asked quietly. Keep the family together. Marcus's expression darkened. She died of a heart attack when I was 19. The doctors said it was stress-related hypertension that had gone untreated for years. She couldn't afford regular checkups because every dollar went to my father's care. He paused. I was in my 2nd year at Stanford on a full scholarship, studying business because I thought that was the fastest way to make money. When she died, I realized that all the money in the world couldn't bring back the years she spent sacrificing herself for people who were already lost. The parallel between their stories was unmistakable. Both had watched strong women exhaust themselves trying to save their families. Both had chosen careers based on survival rather than passion. Both carried guilt for being the ones who escaped while others couldn't. The difference, Marcus said, is that I was too late to save anyone. You still have time. What Marcus Chen proposed next would later be scrutinized by business ethicists, employment attorneys, and corporate governance experts. But in that moment, sitting in his office with Elena Rodriguez's medical bills spread across his desk, Marcus was thinking not as a CEO but as someone who had once been powerless to help the people he loved. I want to pay Daniel's medical bills, he said simply. All of them. The hospital stay, the ongoing insulin costs, whatever he needs to finish school. Elena's immediate response was exactly what Marcus expected: absolute refusal. Mr. Chen, I can't accept that. It wouldn't be appropriate. But Marcus had anticipated her objections. This isn't charity, he said firmly. This is an investment. Your brother is researching affordable insulin production, correct? Chen Technologies has a biomedical research division that could benefit from his work. I'm proposing to fund his education and medical care in exchange for first rights to any patents or innovations he develops. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Elena his company's website. We've funded 12 graduate students in the past 3 years. It's a standard arrangement. But Elena Rodriguez had spent too many years navigating the complicated dynamics of wealth and poverty to accept such a convenient explanation. Mr. Chen, she said, her voice regaining some of its professional composure, you didn't know my brother existed until 20 minutes ago. You're not offering this because of his research potential. You're offering it because you feel sorry for me. The accusation hung in the air between them. Marcus could have deflected, could have insisted on the business justification, could have retreated behind his executive authority. Instead, he told her the truth. You're right, he said. I am offering this because I've spent the last 2 years working with someone who was quietly drowning, and I was too self-absorbed to notice. I'm offering this because my father died from a disease that was completely manageable if we could have afforded to manage it. And yes, I'm offering this because seeing you in pain reminds me of watching my mother kill herself trying to save people she loved. Elena stared at him, processing this level of honesty from a man she had never seen as fully human. But mostly, Marcus continued, I'm offering this because I have the power to solve your problem, and choosing not to help would make me complicit in whatever happens to Daniel. I've spent 15 years accumulating wealth specifically so I would never have to watch someone suffer from problems that money can solve. What's the point of having this much if I don't use it when it matters? The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Elena looked at the medical bills, at the university letter, at Marcus Chen's earnest face. She was being offered a solution to every financial crisis that had dominated her life for 6 years. But accepting it would fundamentally change her relationship with her employer, her sense of independence, and her understanding of herself. If I accept this, she said slowly, what happens to us? To this. She gestured between them. How do I continue working for someone who has this much power over my family's welfare? It was the question that would define everything that came after. Can genuine human connection exist across such vast inequalities of power and wealth? Marcus Chen, who had built his fortune by always having the right answer, found himself admitting something he had never said aloud. I don't know. But I know that pretending this conversation never happened would be worse than figuring out how to move forward from it. Elena Rodriguez's acceptance of Marcus Chen's offer came with conditions that revealed her understanding of power dynamics far better than Marcus himself. If we do this, she said, it has to be completely documented. Legal contracts, repayment schedules, everything official. I won't be in debt to you personally. This has to be a business arrangement between your company and my family. Marcus agreed immediately, not realizing that Elena's insistence on formality would later save both of their careers. Within 48 hours, Chen Technologies' legal department had drafted an educational sponsorship agreement with Daniel Rodriguez. The contract was airtight, professionally worded, and completely legitimate. On paper, it looked like exactly what Marcus had claimed, a standard corporate investment in promising research. But corporate environments are ecosystems where even the smallest changes create ripple effects. Elena's demeanor at work shifted subtly but noticeably. The constant underlying tension that had marked her interactions, the fear of making mistakes, the hypervigilance about Marcus's moods, the exhaustion from working multiple jobs, began to ease. She started contributing ideas during meetings instead of just taking notes. She suggested improvements to office procedures. She even, on one memorable occasion, disagreed with Marcus about a scheduling decision. Elena's transformation was remarkable, recalls Jennifer Walsh, Chen Technologies Director of Human Resources, in a later interview. For 2 years, she had been perfectly efficient but almost invisible. Suddenly, she was participating in conversations, offering insights, showing the kind of initiative that we look for in leadership candidates. It was like watching someone come alive. Marcus, meanwhile, found himself paying attention to Elena in ways that had nothing to do with work performance. He noticed that she preferred tea to coffee in the afternoons. He observed that she always arrived 15 minutes early to organize her day. He realized that her suggestions about employee welfare weren't just pleasantries, they were informed by her experience of working multiple jobs and understanding the pressures that most of his employees faced. But the most significant change was in their communication. The barriers of formality that had defined their relationship for 2 years began to dissolve. Marcus started asking Elena's opinion on decisions that affected company culture. Elena began challenging assumptions that Marcus had never questioned. Their working relationship evolved from authoritarian to collaborative almost overnight. What neither of them understood was that their transformation had not gone unnoticed by the very people who posed the greatest threat to Marcus's leadership. David Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics and architect of the ongoing hostile takeover attempt, had not built a multi-billion-dollar empire by overlooking details. His corporate intelligence team monitored Chen Technologies with the precision of a military operation, tracking everything from quarterly earnings reports to executive parking garage schedules. When Marcus Chen's behavior patterns began changing in late October, Sterling's analysts took notice. The man known for 16-hour workdays was leaving the office by 7 p.m. The CEO who never took phone calls during board meetings was now stepping out to answer calls from someone named Elena. Most significantly, Chen Technologies had suddenly established a new educational sponsorship program, the first employee benefit enhancement in 3 years. Something's gotten to Chen, Sterling told his inner circle during a strategy meeting on October 22. He's distracted, making emotional decisions, spending money on feel-good programs instead of focusing on the takeover defense. Whatever it is, we need to find it and exploit it. The investigation that followed was both thorough and unscrupulous. Private investigators reviewed Marcus's credit card statements, analyzed his phone records, and compiled detailed profiles of everyone in his inner circle. Elena Rodriguez's file made for particularly interesting reading. Working-class background, financial struggles, family medical crises, and suddenly, a lucrative educational sponsorship for her brother funded by her employer. But Sterling's team also uncovered something more valuable than scandal. They identified the emotional pressure point that could destroy Marcus Chen's leadership. He's gotten personally involved with an employee, Sterling's lead investigator reported. Maybe not romantically, but definitely emotionally. She's become his weakness. The plan that emerged from these findings was elegant in its cruelty. Sterling wouldn't attack Marcus's business decisions or financial management, he would attack his character. He would use Marcus's moment of human compassion as evidence of poor judgment, inappropriate relationships, and leadership instability. On October 25, Sterling Dynamics' public relations team began planting stories with financial journalists. Sources close to Chen Technologies report unusual favoritism towards certain employees. Insiders question CEO's recent decision-making process. Chen Technologies' stock volatility linked to leadership distractions. The assault on Marcus Chen's reputation had begun, and Elena Rodriguez was about to become collateral damage in a war she never knew she was fighting. The October 28 board meeting of Chen Technologies was scheduled as a routine quarterly review. Marcus had prepared his usual comprehensive report on company performance, takeover defense strategies, and market projections. What he hadn't prepared for was David Sterling's presence in the conference room. As the largest individual shareholder of Chen Technologies stock, Sterling announced as he took his seat at the board table, "I'm exercising my right to address this board about my concerns regarding current leadership decisions." The room fell silent. Board members exchanged glances. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. Sterling's presentation was masterful in its manipulation of facts. He highlighted Marcus's recent policy changes as evidence of emotional decision-making during a critical period. He questioned the timing of new employee benefits when the company was fighting a hostile takeover. He presented Marcus's shortened work hours as proof of decreased commitment to shareholder interests. But Sterling's knockout punch came when he addressed what he called concerning patterns of favoritism towards certain employees. Without naming Elena directly, he referenced the educational sponsorship program, the policy changes that seemed designed to benefit working-class employees, and what he termed unprecedented personal involvement in subordinates' private affairs. "Gentlemen," Sterling concluded, "we're facing a CEO who has allowed personal emotions to compromise his business judgment. While Marcus Chen has been playing social worker, Sterling Dynamics has gained control of 18% of this company's stock. The question before this board is simple. Do you want a leader who prioritizes corporate welfare over shareholder value?" The board members' faces told Marcus everything he needed to know. These were men who had watched him build Chen Technologies from a startup to a global powerhouse, but they were also men whose primary concern was protecting their investments. Sterling had expertly reframed Marcus's moment of human decency as a liability to the company's future. Board Chairman Robert Hayes spoke first. "Marcus, we need to discuss these concerns about your recent decision-making process. Perhaps we should consider bringing in additional oversight for major policy decisions." Other members nodded in agreement. Marcus realized that his authority, built over 15 years of flawless business performance, was being questioned because he had chosen to help someone. The meeting that was supposed to address Sterling Dynamics' takeover attempt had become a referendum on Marcus Chen's fitness to lead his own company. And Elena Rodriguez, sitting at her desk outside the conference room, had no idea that her life was about to be turned upside down by forces entirely beyond her control. Sterling's trap was perfect. Marcus could defend his actions and appear weak, or he could abandon Elena to protect his position and lose the very humanity that had made him a better leader. Either choice would serve Sterling's ultimate goal of destabilizing Chen Technologies from within. As the board meeting stretched into its third hour, Marcus Chen faced the same impossible choice that had haunted his family 20 years earlier. Sacrifice relationships to preserve security, or risk everything for the people who mattered most. What happened next in that Chen Technologies boardroom would be studied in business schools for years to come. Marcus Chen, facing the destruction of everything he had built, made a decision that defied every conventional wisdom about corporate leadership. Instead of defending himself against Sterling's accusations, he did something unprecedented. He thanked his opponent for exposing the truth. "David is absolutely right," Marcus told the stunned board members. "I have been making decisions based on personal emotions rather than pure profit calculations. I have been prioritizing employee welfare over shareholder returns. And I have been allowing my assistant's personal situation to influence my business policies." The room fell silent. Sterling smiled, believing he had won. But Marcus wasn't finished. "What David hasn't told you is that these emotional decisions have produced the best quarterly results in Chen Technologies' history. Employee satisfaction scores have reached all-time highs. Turnover has dropped by 40%. Productivity is up 18%. And our stock price has remained stable despite the ongoing takeover attempt because investors recognize that companies with engaged, loyal employees outperform those that treat workers as replaceable resources." Marcus stood and walked to the presentation screen. "Elena Rodriguez, my executive assistant, suggested implementing flexible work arrangements for employees with family medical crises. I approved the policy because I understood her situation. The result: we've retained 12 key employees who would have otherwise left for competitors. The cost of replacing those employees would have exceeded $2 million. He clicked to the next slide. Elena suggested establishing an employee emergency fund for unexpected medical expenses. I approved it because I've seen what financial desperation does to families. The result: our health insurance premiums decreased by 15% because employees are seeking preventive care instead of using emergency rooms for routine problems. The board members leaned forward, studying the data. Robert Hayes, the board chairman, spoke first. "These are impressive numbers, Marcus. But Sterling's point about personal involvement with subordinates raises legitimate concerns about professional boundaries." Marcus nodded, having anticipated this objection. "Which is why I'm proposing to promote Elena Rodriguez to Vice President of Employee Experience and Organizational Development. Her insights into worker needs and company culture have proven invaluable. Her MBA from UC Davis and her experience managing complex administrative operations make her uniquely qualified for this position. And her promotion would eliminate any concerns about inappropriate power dynamics between us." Sterling's confident expression faltered. He had expected Marcus to sacrifice Elena to save his own position. Instead, Marcus was using the crisis to advance her career. "This is exactly the kind of emotional decision-making that concerns me," Sterling protested. "Promoting someone based on personal relationships rather than qualifications." Marcus smiled for the first time during the meeting. "Elena has been managing my calendar, coordinating international business trips, and handling confidential corporate communications for 2 years without a single error. She's effectively been doing the job of an executive assistant, a project coordinator, and a human resources liaison simultaneously. Her promotion isn't based on personal relationships, it's based on performance that I was too blind to properly recognize or compensate." The board voted 7-2 in favor of Marcus's proposal. Sterling Dynamics' hostile takeover attempt collapsed within a week as investors recognized that Chen Technologies' employee-focused policies were producing superior returns. The stock price not only stabilized but reached a 3-year high as other companies began copying Chen Technologies' approach to worker welfare. Elena Rodriguez accepted the promotion with the same grace she had shown throughout the crisis. "I'm honored by Mr. Chen's confidence in my abilities," she said during her first interview as a VP. "But I want to be clear, this position was earned through work, not personal favors. I intend to prove that every day." 6 months later, Chen Technologies had become a completely different company. Elena's employee experience programs had reduced turnover by 60%, the highest improvement in the industry. The emergency medical fund had been used by 43 employees, preventing financial crises that would have led to resignations or performance problems. The flexible work arrangements had improved productivity across all departments. Marcus Chen, meanwhile, had learned something that 15 years of business success hadn't taught him. Effective leadership requires understanding the whole person, not just their professional capabilities. He began leaving the office by 6 p.m. most days, delegating responsibilities to his expanded leadership team. He started scheduling regular one-on-one meetings with employees at all levels, not just senior executives. "The change in Marcus was remarkable," recalls Jennifer Walsh, the HR director. "He went from being someone who managed through fear and intimidation to someone who led through genuine engagement with his team. His decision-making became more thoughtful, more inclusive. He was still demanding, but he was also human." Elena thrived in her new role, implementing programs that addressed the real-world challenges facing Chen Technologies' diverse workforce. She established partnerships with local healthcare providers to offer discounted services to employees. She created professional development programs for workers without college degrees. She instituted family-friendly policies that recognized the reality of modern working parents. But perhaps most importantly, both Marcus and Elena learned to maintain their professional relationship while honoring the human connection that had transformed them both. They worked together as colleagues who understood each other's stories, who respected each other's expertise, and who shared a commitment to creating a workplace where people could thrive rather than merely survive. Their friendship, and it was a friendship, built on mutual respect and shared values, became the foundation for a new kind of corporate culture. Elena never forgot that Marcus had been willing to help her family when she had nowhere else to turn. Marcus never forgot that Elena had challenged him to become a better leader and a more complete person. "People often ask if there was ever anything romantic between us," Elena said during a company newsletter interview. The answer is no, and that's what made our working relationship so powerful. We saw each other as fully human, which is rarer in corporate environments than it should be. We built something based on professional respect and personal understanding, not on power dynamics or hidden agendas. Daniel Rodriguez graduated from UC Berkeley with highest honors in May 2024. His senior thesis on affordable insulin production caught the attention of researchers at Stanford Medical School, where he was accepted with a full scholarship. His first research publication, co-authored with Elena and funded by Chen Technologies' Biomedical Research Division, proposed manufacturing techniques that could reduce insulin costs by up to 60%. Marcus Chen's company became a case study in enlightened leadership. Business schools invited him to speak about the connection between employee welfare and corporate performance. His TED Talk, The Competitive Advantage of Compassion, has been viewed over 2 million times. But Marcus always credits Elena with teaching him that true success means creating conditions where everyone can flourish. Elena Rodriguez was promoted to senior vice president within 18 months, making her one of the youngest executive officers in Chen Technologies history. She has been invited to speak at conferences about corporate culture and workplace innovation. Her programs have been adopted by companies across Silicon Valley and beyond. The story of Marcus Chen and Elena Rodriguez proves that the most transformative business relationships aren't built on hierarchy or transaction, but on recognition of shared humanity. They discovered that when you see someone's full story, their struggles, their dreams, their capabilities, you create possibilities that benefit everyone involved. Their success wasn't measured only in stock prices or quarterly reports, though both improved dramatically. It was measured in the hundreds of employees who no longer had to choose between career advancement and family responsibilities. It was measured in the workplace culture that valued people as individuals, not just as human resources. And it was measured in the simple fact that two people from completely different backgrounds found a way to work together that honored both their professional goals and their personal values. They proved that you don't have to sacrifice your humanity to succeed in business. Sometimes, embracing your humanity is exactly what makes the difference between mere success and lasting impact. Marcus Chen and Elena Rodriguez never became romantic partners, and they never needed to. What they found was something far more valuable. A working relationship built on genuine respect, shared purpose, and the understanding that everyone's story matters. In a world that often demands we hide our struggles and present perfect facades, they chose to be authentically human. And that choice changed everything. The story of Marcus Chen and Elena Rodriguez isn't really about a billionaire CEO and his secretary. It's about all of us, about every time we have the choice to see someone fully or to look past them, to help or to ignore, to lead with compassion or to manage through fear. Marcus learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of real strength. When he allowed himself to be affected by Elena's struggle, he didn't become a weaker leader. He became a more effective one. He discovered that the most successful organizations are built on trust, and trust requires the courage to be genuinely human with the people around you. Elena learned that her worth wasn't measured by her ability to handle everything alone. When she accepted help, she didn't become dependent, she became empowered to help others. She discovered that the most powerful thing you can do is use your own experience of struggle to create better conditions for the people who come after you. Together, they proved that the best professional relationships honor the whole person, not just their job title or their usefulness to your goals. They showed that sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone isn't to solve their problems, but to see them as fully human and worthy of respect regardless of their circumstances. Success without authentic connection is just an expensive way to be lonely. But when you have the courage to bridge the gaps between people, gaps of wealth, status, background, or experience, you create something more valuable than any individual achievement. You create a community where everyone can thrive. The next time you encounter someone who is struggling, remember Marcus and Elena. Remember that everyone you meet is carrying burdens you can't see, fighting battles you know nothing about, and dreaming dreams that might seem impossible from where they're standing. The most powerful thing you can do isn't always to fix their problems. Sometimes it's simply to remind them that they matter, that their story has value, and that they're capable of more than they've ever imagined. Because in the end, we're all just people trying to make our way in the world. And when we choose to see each other's full humanity, when we choose compassion over indifference, when we choose connection over isolation, that's when extraordinary things become possible. That's the lesson of Marcus Chen and Elena Rodriguez. That's the power of choosing to be human in a world that often demands we be anything but. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have risked your career to help someone you barely knew? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, everyone you meet today is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Sometimes the smallest act of recognition or kindness can change everything. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more real stories about the moments that change lives. And if you're struggling with something right now, know that your story matters too. You're worth more than your worst moment, and you're capable of more than you know. Thank you for watching, and remember, we're all more connected than we think.